Hi, friends. The other day, I was up at our therapeutic riding center, which is really close by here in the same town. And it was on the weekend, and they have an instructor who comes on Saturdays for clients. Now, this therapeutic riding place does veterans, adults with physical and mental challenges, children with emotional challenges. I mean, it's amazing the work that they do, uh, as these as the people can interact with the horses, and I think that's why so many of us volunteer up there and go and hang out because being with horses is so healing. Anyway, this instructor that comes up on the weekend, she seems very closed up, very closed up. And I just happened that day to be there when she was working with a adult who was on one of their big draft horses with sidewalkers and a leader, but as an instructor, she was working with the person who was on the horse. And I just saw her heart open. And all I could think of was a flower that opens in the daytime and then closes. Some flowers actually close up at night and then open again in the sunshine. And I was thinking how amazing, you know, that she protects her heart in some situations. At least that's my interpretation of what was going on. I could be totally off, but this was my observation, and then opens it when she's working with a client. Now, this young woman, and she's quite young, works with autistic children. That's her day job. So that tells you a little something about her. So, this idea of being our authentic self, and when we allow ourselves to open like a flower in some situations with some people, I think we all do it with our pets all the time. So, when does the flower close up for some of us? Well, I know for me, it's often around my family because they hold me to the history of who I was when I was in my 20s and I was struggling to figure out life. And I was in a difficult marriage. Um, I had stepchildren, they were the good part. And instead of going the professional route, I wanted to be in nature. And that's always been my drive, is to be with the earth. And so, I didn't follow the path of my family professionally. And my husband, who also, well, he's in recovery. Some of you know that already. And his family tends to hold him to the identity of who he was when he was drinking, which which ended when he was, oh, I'd say around 35. And that was never who he was anyway. It was his response to pain, to trauma. And I think there's a physical component to this as well. But in his recovery, in his long recovery, he has sponsored men um, in a type of spiritual um, self awareness and self responsibility and self management. And he speaks at a lot of meetings all across the country because a lot of the AA meetings now are on Zoom. And that's not who he is. That's not his authentic self. And so there are some circumstances where we do close up and protect ourselves, and other times when we can open our heart and show ourselves. So I'd be really interested if you thought about times when you could be your authentic self. And now, okay, so what is our authentic self? To me, it's the awareness that we had before, and we do have an identity. There is an identity within that awareness before we are born that we will return to after we die. But in the meantime, that identity is cloaked in the story of who we are in this experience. And sometimes we lose track of our authentic self. You know, I recently had to go back on antidepressants temporarily because we have 5 huge gardens here on the farm, and I can't do what I used to do in the garden. And to me, gardens are a celebration of relationship with the plants. You know, never mind the food. That's a perk. But I love my old friends. You know, zucchini, tomatoes, you know, it's about relationship for me, gardening. And so I get very depressed in the spring because I'm fairly limited physically now. So I can't do what I used to do. And I get really down on myself and disappointed with myself. So spring is almost never a real happy time for me, even though we've had a gorgeous spring this year here in New England. It's been long and cool and unfolding fairly slowly, slower than it usually does. Anyway, so think about when you can open your heart, because the that's the umbilical cord to the self that we were before we were born. So when you open your heart, you're showing who you really are. All right, my friends, I hope you enjoy. I edited a video that I'm going to put in this newsletter below this. Until I see you again, please be well. Please be blessed. Thanks for coming.